Hey friends, I can't remember if we have ever used the word synoptic. It's a fancy word for comparing Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Those three are quite similar in many ways. John is kind of another way of writing a gospel, but those three have so much harmony going on that they are known by this title, the Synoptics. Okay, this chart goes back to 66, and it doesn't maybe look at all interesting to you, but I hope to change that here in the coming minutes. So you see, it's got all three Gospels. Those are the three colorful columns there. On the left is Matthew, Mark is in the middle, and Luke to the right. Number one, you notice how much shorter Mark is. Matthew, how much shorter it is. And then if you notice that kind of orangish pink color, all of that material in Mark is used either in one of the other Gospels. In other words, almost everything in Mark is used in those other Gospels. Now, I should have showed earlier, what this chart does is it takes the stories in each Gospel, lays them out, one after the order that the stories are in. And then the chapter is right here, chapter 1. Mark has 16. 16. And then within each individual box for a story, John the Baptist, starts off the Gospel of Mark. Verse 2 is where this section is, okay? Yeah. Now, one of the things that's really quite revolutionary to me, I went through a time, not very long, but of thinking of the Gospels being written kind of in a trance, or, the Spirit takes over and the human is left out. Seeing this chart really helped me to see how human the writing of the Gospels is. Okay, notice these red lines. See, all the way down through. Okay, here's the Gospel of Mark, all the sayings and stories in Mark. And these red lines go to, many of them, these individual stories. Look how the lines they don't cross each other. All these stories in Mark connect to Luke in the same order that they are in Mark. So that tells me, and Luke, in the very beginning of his gospel, he even says, hey, I used other gospels to write this one, other stories, and stuff. All of these, the lines aren't crisscrossing. All these red stories are in the same order as over here, okay? Luke used Mark to write Luke's gospel. Now, everything you see in yellow, and Luke has a lot of yellow, don't you think? All of those stories and sayings are unique to Luke. We used to say Luke and Luke alone. And in seminary, you have pretty wild times there. Luke and Luke alone. So Luke will include a section of his own material, brings in Mark, then unique. So you can see, it isn't until he gets here that he's really taken a big chunk of Mark. Here's another big chunk of Mark. But yeah, okay. Now, I've told you about the yellow. The blue, this light blue, you see in both yeah, okay. Yeah, you see this blue here. That is material stories that are in Matthew and Luke, but not Mark. And this is why we think there was another gospel out there, or collection of sayings that both Luke and Matthew knew about, and maybe Mark didn't. Yeah, so yellow is unique to Luke. This light blue are things that are in Matthew and Luke, but not in Mark or John. Okay? Or I guess maybe we can't include John. Things that are in white are unique to Matthew. The other Gospels don't have those stories. So you can see there's little bits of unique Matthew stuff that nobody else has, but not as much as Luke. Luke has a lot of unique stuff. Yeah, Matthew, not quite as much. But you can. Some people study this for their whole careers, which seems kind of incredible. but yeah, the relationships between Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the Synoptics, yield a lot of information about how the tradition was passed on. Matthew, we think, this gospel, Matthew, was originally in the area of Syria, where there was active trouble between folks that remained Jewish, fully Jewish, and the Jews who were turning to Christ, Jesus. So in these communities, there was lots of trouble, and so Matthew is almost like a teaching manual for people who need to talk about Jesus and, if need be, defend Jesus. Yeah. So anyway, Syria, we think, is the area of the world where Matthew was. Now, Mark is kind of interesting. There's quite an old tradition of Mark in Egypt, Alexandria. Not a lot of evidence, though, but just a lot of tradition that Mark came over to Egypt. Luke is a little bit harder to figure out where it came from, but I think it is sometimes identified with Ephesus in what we now call Turkey. In other words, on the western shore of what we would call Turkey, facing Greece. But others say, oh, Luke was written in Rome, and others say, oh, in Athens or whatever. But I guess most of the tradition is Western Turkey, which is the same area that produced the Gospel of John. Okay, that's quite a bit to lay on you there at one time, but yeah, hope this is interesting.